just verifying real quick.
Yeah, I was just saying, I usually give me a countdown.
All right, we are live.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the Warren City School District Board of Education meeting. The regular meeting today is Tuesday, August the 11th, 2020. The time is 6:03 p.m. We are located at the Harding High School WSCN studio. Via Zoom, joining us are Mr. Faulkner, Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Fowley, and Mr. Walker will be joining us shortly. Live stream is available at warrencityschools.org. This meeting is a meeting of the Warren City Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participating via email during the meeting as indicated in agenda item number 11. And if everyone would please rise now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And with that, I'll call the meeting to order, and if we may have a roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Faulkner?
Present.
Mr. Fowley?
Present.
Mrs. Patterson?
Present.
And Mrs. Lamperos?
I'm here, and Mr. Walker has advised me that he's trying to log in as we speak, so he'll be joining us. We have no reason for executive session at the front end of the meeting here, so we will move on to communications.
I have two communications this evening. First, in regards to the reset and restart plan for the Warren City Schools, I wish to announce that it is complete at this time. We are not able to release it tonight, this evening, because we are waiting to do a finalized alignment with the Warren City Health Department, and that is important that we are current as of the current guidance, and I would hate to release a document that may be off in an area or two from the guidance that is from our local provider. So when that is done, I would hope that would be later this week, and we'll be releasing the document publicly to our families and community.
Okay, thank you.
Second, I also have a communication hot off the press that the Ohio Department of Education this afternoon has announced that the Ohio School Report Cards will have no grades and no rankings issued for the 2019-2020 school year. While some available data will be reported publicly for informational and planning purposes, these metrics will not factor into any graded measures. The measures, primarily based on the spring state test, will not have data available this year. However, these measures, based on lagged or prior year data, will be available. Specifically, measures primarily based on the spring test will not be made publicly this year. The report card will not have the achievement component, progress component, or gap closing component data, as they are based upon the spring tests that were canceled. So some changes and some finalization there from the Department of Education and the governor's office. That concludes my communications this evening.
Okay, thank you. Item number 5, if I could please have a motion for the adoption of the agenda.
So moved, Faulkner.
Second, Regina.
Thank you. And if we could please call the roll.
Mr. Faulkner?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley? Mr. Fowley?
You're on mute.
Julian just told me to unmute my microphone. Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes,
Sorry.
that's okay. I was waiting. And the motion carries. All right. Item number 6, the treasurer's report.
I'd like to give a little update on some of our grant funding that we've received due to the COVID-19 circumstances, and I kind of going to ask for Mr. Shiro and Mr. Lacey to jump in regards to maybe some specific number of items we've purchased or anything like that. But to begin with, we received ESSER funds under the CARES Act, And the total grant award amount was $3,478,327. Of that, $68,905 went to our non-publics. And so the allocation to Warren City Schools was $3,409,421. To date, we have expenditures in the amount of $1,072,685, and we have obligations, which means we have items out there that we have ordered and just haven't paid for yet, in the amount of $1,085,183. So to date, we've spent 62% of our allocation, and we have still available $1.3 million they're about to spend under those funding sources. Some of the items that we've purchased under there are technology devices. So along with these CARES Act dollars, we also were able to utilize some of our Title I and School Quality Improvement Grant dollars to pay for devices in the amount of just shy of $1.5 million. And then we've also spent dollars on personal protective equipment. $432,000 has been spent or obligated to support maintenance and business operations, and just shy of $75,000 has been for food service operations. And I don't know if either of you would like to speak more clearly as to what we've been using those dollars for.
Yes, I can fill in a little more on this. Specifically for student devices, we have purchased laptops for all students in grades 2 through 12 in the district. Total we have purchased so far is 4,073 laptops at a cost of just over $900,000. As I stated in March, when this school closure began, we were already in the process of looking at what we were going to do as our next steps as far as technology and moving the district forward. So timing wise, this fit real nicely as far as where we're going and how we were going to get there. We've also purchased 850 iPads at a cost of just under $350,000. That is for providing a device for every student in grades K and 1. The purpose there is to have a different delivery model for students as far as the iPad and apps and app-based programs versus laptops, and as far as the teaching that'll take place. This is enough devices so that every student has a device that they can have and take home and keep home. What our plan is, in the district, we have approximately 3,000 laptop computers currently in-house on carts. And these laptops will be utilized in the schools, in classrooms, so students will not have to be bringing their device back and forth. Okay. Now, the distribution of these devices will be fitting into our academic plan, that some students will be receiving their devices at the start of the school year, primarily those that are on full online and remote learning. Students that are attending school 2 days a week on our hybrid model may receive their devices at the start of the year, or we may wait to do that after Labor Day so that we could work on how to integrate the technology between the school and the home. Some other expenditures we have with technology is student device extra components such as laptop carts and charging stations in the building. That's important so that we can keep the laptops charged. We also have committed to hotspots for student learning. Right now, we have committed to 1,375 hotspots at a cost of approximately $250,000. Now, we have approximately 2,800 families in the district, and with the 1,375 hotspots, this will take care of a majority of them. This number coincides with a grant that was submitted on Monday for the broadband support through the state of Ohio, which we submitted in the amount of $250,000. So we anticipate purchasing these items, and we would anticipate receiving grant dollars on the back end to cover that cost. If there's additional hotspots needed, in addition to $1,375, we'll be able to purchase those through ESSER dollars or other means available to us. We also have purchased 325 teacher units of computers at a cost of just over $100,000, so that our teachers will have the same ability to communicate with our students. Then we look at software and other related components $30,000. So the total cost that we have expended regarding technology is just over $1.7 million, and we expect to receive a grant for at least the $250,000 of that. In regards to PPE, Mr. Lacey can talk more specifically, but I can say that when we're talking about the preparedness for this district for students, we have bought hundreds of thousands of facial masks, facial shields in addition for our teachers, thermometers, temperature scanning, which Mr. Lace will be discussing in a moment, disinfectant wipes, tablets to run our electrostatic sprayers, wipes, portable screens, face shields, buckets for wipes in the classrooms, refills for those, water stations to replace drinking fountains, and many other miscellaneous items to support the health and wellness of our students. And as Karen has pointed out, our total PPE purchase is slightly over $400,000. We also, in addition to the grant that we submitted for the $250,000, also have an award of $292,000 that we have to plan how we're going to expend those dollars in addition to the initial ESSER dollars. So at this time, I'd like to turn over to Mr. Lacey if you'd like to discuss in more detail our PPE that we've for the district.
Yeah, what I'll sample, good evening, everybody.
Evening.
What I'll sample for you right now is our temperature scanner. We bought 24 of these, and they will be at every entrance of the building. I don't know, Frank, are you picking these up? Okay. So basically, as a child exits the bus, they first come into the classroom, or first come into the building, they're going to walk right in front.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
It'll register the temperature every second. So as we go through with about 6 feet social distancing, every second should be very nice for the temperatures. We worked out in the buildings today for setups where they're going to be. These are accurate within 0.4 of a degree. And they're very simple. It's just an on and off switch. And there's some other facial recognition, some other things it can do, but that's all software related. We're not that concerned about it right now. It also has this component.
Please wear a mask.
If I don't have my Hvac mask on as I come up, it still registers the temperature, but it also tells you to wear a mask. Now, if the child does have a high temperature, it'll basically say, please see the attendant, which at that time we'll probably have people there with handhelds to double check the temperature to see where they're at, and then with the nurse there, determine if they need to be taken to one of the quarantine rooms, or if it's another form, go into the clinic or into the classroom. So, and I'm sure we'll have more of that coming out from Janine from Akron Children's Hospital too. But this was one of our major purchases. We just got this in today. So that has been one of our biggest challenges, is trying to time up all of the orders that we have. As Steve said, we have about 550,000 facial masks and shields. The disinfectant that we're using in the sprayers is going to be used in the lunchrooms and on the school buses is the same disinfectant we have been using for the past several years in the classrooms. So we're not introducing anything unique into the sprayers that we're going to be using. We have about another 20 sprayers that are going to be coming in, as well as 12 more electrostatic sprayers. That, just to give you an idea, I saw the paperwork today. We ordered those electrostatic sprayers back on May 18th. Wow. And right now the target date is September. So things have been extremely, extremely difficult to come by. We have found a nice hand sanitizer company in Youngstown. We have hundreds of gallons. Bottles are not a problem. We have bottles from 4 ounces up to 24 ounces at our disposal that we're filling manually. The wipes, we're making our own wipes. Again, with disinfectant that we're already using in classrooms. We'll have 300 of those in the teachers' rooms. We'll have 300 roll of paper towels, and so that any spills with a lot of children eating in the classrooms, that they'll be able to take care of those. I also ordered 300 more garbage cans. With all the kids eating in classrooms, that was kind of an issue. So we're getting into a lot of detail with what's going on, and a lot of different ideas as far as how things are working. And as I said, the way the staffs have been, they've come up with things out in the field that have been really helpful, because we're getting in now to the little details as to what things are going to look like once the student comes off the bus and go to walk into the school. And I'm really confident in what we've accomplished and what we have to come on as we move further. Anything else?
Just, is there any questions regarding technology or PPE purchasing?
Anyone?
Anyone?
No question, but as a comment, I'm thoroughly impressed with both the technology implementation and the safety factor, the health factors with the thermometers and whatnot. Thoroughly impressed, especially the cost. Kudos to the entire administration and the treasurer for being able to find the funds to be able to do this and on such short notice.
I would thank you for that. I would like to add also that it's very important to us that we are making our families feel safe, that we're taking care of their children, making our staff feel safe, that they're working in a safe environment that is clean, that is as low risk as an indoor facility can be. In addition, we also bought no-touch thermometers that we're going to give to all of our teachers to have in the classroom as well, because part of reducing the transmission of COVID is reducing transitions between places. So if there is a concern with a child potentially having a fever, that could be determined at the classroom level real quick with the scan. That'll provide a sense of safety, security for our staff members, students' parents, and then we could, if a student does have the temperature, just as one of the signs, for a potential COVID case, then we could contact the nurse and they could immediately begin to follow whatever health and safety protocols they have in place. We're trying to leave no stone unturned in order to make sure that we can provide what we know, according to health guidelines, to be the safest possible, healthiest possible school environment.
Oh, the one I forgot, Steve, is one of the most recent ones is each building will have parents do not even have to come into the office to sign off their child. We will be replacing glass with kind of a ticket window, for lack of a better word, that has a little vented area, so you can do everything out in the locked areas. Nobody needs to come in even to the office. Those are being done now. We're waiting on the orders for tempered glass and how that needs to be cut. So we found locations in each of the buildings, and that's going to be taking place and will be done prior to school starting also. So as a parent comes in, they'll have to call already to say, I'm coming to get my child. And then they go right to the little ticket window where we will have a secretary, and they'll start the process right then without even coming in the office. So that was our latest, Steve's latest idea, actually, I think, that talked about knocking down walls and stuff. So
in addition, again, this isn't an expense with PPE, and this kind of trickles into some of the things that our restart plan, some of the fine details. We reallocated our staff. If we were going to have less students attending because they're going 2 days a week, and we have a percentage of our children that are attending in a full online model, we have reallocated some of our maintenance staff, and they're going to be working the day shift. There's going to be individuals whose sole responsibility all day long is cleaning and wiping down touch points. If it's restrooms, if it's office areas, if it's classrooms, cafeteria tables, whatever, wherever the students are, and there's a touch point, we are going to have staff dedicated to doing that. Existing staff. There's no need to have additional, but just using our resources, changing folks from an evening shift to a day shift is some of the things that it'll take to make sure that our environment is as safe and clean as possible.
All right. Any other questions?
No?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so did you
That
have any?
concludes my
that's-
report.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 7, and that's the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mrs. Lamperis. Our first superintendent's report this evening is from Dante Capers, principal at Warren Z. Harding High School, regarding college readiness testing. Mr. Capers is joining us via Zoom. Also, Regina, our Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction, may want to join in as well in this presentation. Mr. Capers?
All right, thank you, Mr. Shiro. Hey, during the 2018-2019 school year, College Board held a series of meetings regarding changes that were to be made with the advanced placement program starting this year. Some changes with the format of testing and some curriculum supports and online supports available to teachers. At those meetings, the College Board suite of assessments was brought up, was discussed, and how it really supported student achievement in AP course testing. So we kind of began to do a little investigation, had some meetings with some of their regional reps, and this past school year began to utilize some of the assessments within their suite. The suite of assessments consist of the PSAT, which is the pre-SAT 8 and 9, so it's an SAT test offered to 8th and 9th graders. Also a PSAT 10, which is offered to 10th graders. Which many 10th graders are taking traditionally. That's the assessment where national merit scholars are determined from that assessment. And then also the SAT itself. And really looking at that as a tool, the suite of assessment to identify where students stand relative to their college readiness in ELA and math. So the assessments includes benchmark assessments from one year to the next. So students, and we're able to kind of see how students are doing in the 9th grade relative to the 10th grade, relative to how they did in 9th grade, and then also ultimately on the SAT. Great job measuring growth from one assessment to the next. Also importantly, provides projections of how the PSAT students stand to fare on the actual SAT. So these assessments really become a useful tool for us within the building to see how we can project students are going to fare on the SAT, and not just on the SAT, but where they stand in regards to college readiness. Mr. Shiro mentioned the state report card earlier, and again, we know that college readiness is an assessment on that state report card there. And there's also an important tool that came out of this on the PSAT that deals with an AP potential indicator. So students who take these PSAT exams based on their performance, College Board will let them know if they have AP potential based on their performance. So it kind of flags students who may fly under the radar, who are not taking advanced or honors courses, and say, hey, this student has a potential to take and do well in the AP class. So this is helpful to us, in our efforts with addressing equity issues and whatnot, to really identify underrepresented student populations and to encourage them to take AP courses, and to also identify areas where they may need support in taking those AP courses. So this suite of assessments is not only beneficial for us as a building, but it's also useful for our families and students as well. The PSAT gives current standing, but also provides a plan for intervention for our families. It lays out, hey, this is where you are in the 8th grade, the 9th grade, or the 10th grade, and it kind of put together a plan of improvement for this is where you need to be college ready by the time you hit the 12th grade. It's aligned with Khan Academy, so it tells you where you need to go, but then it also gives you a plan for intervention. It can be self-directed or school-directed, but it's web-based and it's dependent upon Khan Academy, so a very useful resource there. So it really helps facilitate students' growth in target areas. The family reports are very user friendly, a lot of color, very engaging, and they're shared with families directly with that. So we've had a lot of positive feedback just over the past few years with the PSAT and the family reports. And again, compares that growth from assessment to assessment. So families are in a position to really assess their own focus areas with that. When we look at the SAT in general, we found here the building, and also our rep is claimed, and we found to be the truth, that it is more aligned to our current state standards in comparison to the ACT. So it's been beneficial from that standpoint. And then also students who've taken the SAT just over the years on a Saturday here or there, we had a lot of positive feedback to the fact that it's not a time test. So some of our students felt better about some of the sections coming out of that because it's not a time test with that there. And a question that's kind of come up, and I wanted to ask, and then I did ask, our rep, and then we kind of kicked around even as an administrative team, was that thing, well, if the students take this, will they score higher? Are they more apt to be successful? And this assessment really isn't about achieving a higher score necessarily. Some students do better on one type of assessment, some students do better on others. But what really encourages us and what we really like with this SAT or suite of assessments, it's about the suite being a tool to help our students grow in their college readiness throughout their time from as early as the 9th grade and even potentially the 8th grade through 12th grade. So now there's a tool that has common language that kids can engage with every year to know exactly where they stand in regards to college readiness. And they can help to sort of grow for their own success as well as that there. So, we are looking to the SAT to be our state-sponsored college readiness assessment coming into this year. And students can still take the ACT. As students still get up to 5 fee waivers for the ACT, and students can choose to take that. And we would encourage students to take, both of these assessments, again, to see which one they may fare better at. There's no harm in taking these assessments, and there's really no disadvantage to them taking both. So most certainly, we would encourage students to take both there. And one thing that kind of sticks out in it, unlike the past, universities really are just assessing applicants' college readiness as opposed to a specific score on a particular assessment. So, in the past, certain colleges favored the ACT over the SAT. That's not as much of a thing anymore, as much as the college is just wanting to assess for students' college readiness in general with that there. Kind of the last point, there's a number of high schools and school districts within our area, actually throughout the state, who have made this transition in recent years. Some similar districts, such as Alliance, Canton, Cleveland Heights, even Euclid, to some other districts, Brecksville, Broadville Heights, St. Ignatius, Streetsboro, Orange. So it really kind of cuts across, the demographic and the spectrum of the state as to schools who are really embracing this SAT suite of assessment as a way to encourage student growth. And sort of the last point on this, they drew some nice parallels as to how students growing their skills through this SAT suite of assessments also support increased achievement on the AP assessments as well, which is another one of our focus areas.
I have a question. Are we still going to be an ACT testing site if we're not?
Yep,
okay.
Absolutely. In fact, we're currently an SAT testing site and an SAT testing site. So we test both, and nothing would change that at all.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right.
Regina, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think the only thing, when this discussion started, it also came out of, we use NWA MAP in kindergarten through 8th grade as a benchmark assessment system, which is 3 times a year, works very well for us in K to 8. However, when we got to high school's course specific, and really making those projections didn't always give the most accurate or at least data that the high school could use to make real good intervention decisions. So that was the other reason we started to kind of just look what else is out there to really send a child through their trajectory through high school, from their freshman year all the way through to their senior year, to make intervention, good college decisions, course decisions, and the big one with it not being timed is it's a real benefit to students.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
For your report. Okay, if there's no other questions, we're going to move on to the second superintendent's report this evening, which is a facilities update brought to us by John Lacey, our Executive Director of Business Operations. Mr. Lacey?
Back up.
Hello again. So facilities update, we'll go through the good news first, which is to basically let you know that the tennis courts at Lincoln are ready to go and should be on, or they're locked right now, but they're ready to go. One addition we'll have is we're going to get a tennis backboard for people to practice as singles. That's something that's a nice, will be a nice little addition there. So we'll get that added, but maybe Bill, I don't know if they're going to start practicing on that, if Bill knows that, if there's girls tennis coming or where we're at there, but the tennis court there is done, ready to be used. The softball field, you can see some pictures of both of these items in your Friday packets that went out. The softball field is, they're working on cutting in the sidewalks. If we had to play softball right now, we could. So if there's still that thought of switching spring to fall from the state, which I doubt will happen, but anyways, Bill and I talk about that a lot. We could play right now if we had to. The field is complete, the inside of the field. So we're finishing dugouts. We had pads to pour for the bleachers, and we should be good to go with that. Probably total completion by mid-fall. The other facilities item we have going on, of course, is Willard. The ventilation project itself that we initially started with is going pretty well. There was a little bit of a delay with the louvers or vents that we were supposed to be getting. Those are now up, and basically the project is just about done. Now the bad news is the roof project at Willard. I got an email about a week and a half ago from the architect. Basically, the roofing company, Boak & Son, has not been able to get the fire retardant plywood that is necessary for the job. We've looked and worked with Kim Phillips, looked at any different types of materials that could possibly be used, but the strong suggestion was that to maintain this with the fire retardant plywood. So that is supposed to be delivered here by the end of the month. So basically, finish time now, based upon this issue with the supply chain, would probably put us end of October, November, would be the more realistic situation. So this will create a little bit of a challenge as to having a roof being put on as kids are starting class. I've already been with Michelle Shiro at Willard, checking where ingress and egress for the kids, how that can look, where materials will be kept, if we need a storage unit for anything equipment-wise. We feel that we're going to be in pretty good shape. The one unknown is obviously going to be what's the amount of noise that's going to be created from this. So I guess the one positive that Steve and I talked about is we have a lot of flexibility within the building. So if things need to be rearranged to make things work appropriately for the best possible learning environment, we're definitely going to make that happen. So that's basically what I have. Is there any questions?
If I can reiterate, when we're talking about Willard and we're talking about, the roof noise, if there is any disruption to education, the capacity of the building on any given day should not exceed 1/3 of what the building was built for, due to the students being in a hybrid learning setting, as well as families that have opted to go full online and remote. So we have the flexibility within the rooms in the facility. If there's an area they're focusing on, we could relocate students for the couple days they're there, or the week, etc. So unfortunately, this is a good time to have a problem when it comes to operating schools in a facility.
Okay.
Okay. Questions? Any other
That's
questions?
it. That's it. That's it.
That concludes the superintendent's reports for this evening.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on then to the Board of Education committee reports under A, athletics. Mr. Nicholson.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sir. Okay, very good. As John was saying a little bit earlier, the tennis courts, basically all that remains is some landscaping around the perimeter. If you haven't had an opportunity to get up there and check it out, it is unbelievable. I've got so many positive comments coming in from community members, and I've had some phone calls with some previous people that have coached here, and they can't tell you how happy, the progress and what the outcome of this tennis course has been up in Lincoln. And I want to thank all the entire board and Mr. Shiro, all the administration for making this come to fruition. I think the students of Warren are going to benefit from it. My vision, what I see is we're going to be able to get some of the younger kids out there for PE classes. We may be able to offer Saturday morning tennis instructions for periods of time as intramurals. And I really think this is going to stimulate some growth with our youth tennis and hopefully, attract some future players. The softball field, as John said, you've probably driven by here tonight. The dugouts are going up. The place is phenomenal. Just some outside landscaping and maintenance to take care of. And like John said, this place could be ready to play tonight if we had to. Let's get back, since I last talked to you, we got an email from the OHSAA last Friday at about 5 o'clock, and they were informing us that the 2020 football schedule was no longer going to be a 10-game season, and it was going to be reduced to 6 games, and all current contracts were null and void. Wow. So we're like, really? So we spent a lot of time over the weekend trying to get together with athletic directors to create another schedule, because if you had somebody on the schedule that you might have signed that you really may not want to, there's a great opportunity for some teams to find another team. We were blessed enough that the local teams, pretty much we got most of our local teams that were with and scheduled them, and we had one opening as of Monday morning left. It was game 1. We lost Canton McKinley, and the reason is the Federal League consists of 7 teams. Therefore, they have 6 games, so they went and scheduled all conference games. So we were blessed to have Cleveland Heights reach out to play us. So if you saw the original schedule, there's been a change. I've emailed it to Mr. Shiro, Mr. Capers today, Coach Arnold, showing them what we've got. We have a 6-game schedule now. We have 3 home games, 3 away games. We go to Cleveland Heights the first game. We host Mooney the second. We will go to Massillon, then Fitch, and then we finish the last 2 games of the regular season hosting Ursuline and Akron St. Vincent St. Mary's. So getting back to the governor, we are still, fall sports is scheduled to go. We're currently under an order not to have any spectators at our sports, and we're still waiting for a decision from the governor to see, what's going to happen here. We do open up with a boys soccer game next Friday, the 21st, and every time he has a press conference, we're hoping he makes a decision and tells us what's going on. It's got to be coming within the next 5 to 7 days, I believe. So as of right now, our their kids are working hard. They're practicing hard. I told all the coaches, prepare as though there's definitely going to be a season. Cross your fingers, and we should know something within the next 5 to 7 days.
Which is
And it's
crazy.
basically all I have. Is there any questions?
My goodness. I don't have anything. Any board members have any questions for Mr. Nicholson about the sports?
So I do have one. We haven't really got a confirmation from the state yet if there's really going to be a season, but they told us if there is one, it's going to be shorter. Is that what it is?
That's what the 6 game.
As for football, they're planning on having a season. They have reduced the number of regular season games from 10 to 6. One of the reasons was to move the season up to avoid the oncoming winter when they're thinking flu and this COVID may get stronger again. Therefore, they reduced the regular season by 4 games. And what they're doing is week 7 will start the playoffs, and they've invited everyone to be a part of the playoffs. So as for the other sports, soccer's preparing to play a full season. We haven't heard anything about that. I have heard some rumors about a possible 2-week pushback on the start of their season. So there's a possible delay. I'm hearing from some people that know some people in Columbus.
So the playoff, every team's in the playoff, is that correct? Now, how does that playoff schedule go? Will it follow sort of the same thing in terms of elimination for playoffs and determining the champion? How's that going to go?
Well, it's a good question, Bob. The computer rankings and ratings that we usually use are not going to be used. What they're going to do, the coaches are going to actually vote on who they think in the region, who's the 1 team, who's the number 2, all the way through probably 24 teams.
Okay.
And then they'll establish higher seed will host a game. So,
Right.
we could host a game week 7. If we win, we could possibly host a game again in week 8. And we would continue until, you get to the state championship game, which used to be in early December. They're saying the
Right.
finals are somewhere mid-November now.
Right. Okay. So this is going to be really local decisions on how all this thing is going to go down. That way I'm looking at that. You guys will have to.
Bob, it's kind of interesting right now what's going on. Yeah, at some point, the OHSAA or the governor is going to have to make the decision on, on what
today
we're finally doing.
the governor spoke at 2 today at a presser, and towards the end, he did say that a decision will be forthcoming regarding the football season. So
Okay.
So he's next up again on Thursday. So let's see if he makes an announcement then.
Okay.
All right. Anything under the finance advisory? No, of course, because we're not doing any meetings. Board policies and guidelines.
The only thing is, as you read in your update, Steve, Julian, and I did have a meeting, and you will find on the board agenda tonight, there is a first reading of 3 policies and a second reading waiver because these policies need to be implemented.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. Okay. Under legislative, I don't have anything official.
I don't either.
Okay. TCTC, do you have any news, Bob?
No, the good news is that when schools open, we have a excellent contingent of students, as we always do, that are anticipating going to TCTC, when we open, and they are participating in various courses that's out there. And that also includes a lot of adults going through their program. So things look good there, just like everybody else. We wait till everything opens up, but there's everything seems to be in order once we open.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, moving on to agenda item number 9 under old business. Do we have anything?
Yes, we have briefly talked about previously in the meeting what I'm going to read. How about that?
Okay.
And without giving deference to any political party or affiliation, but also at the same time acknowledging an historic moment today where the first South Asian and African American woman was put at the vice president nomination of a major ticket.
Yes.
As boards of education across the country have condemned racism, and in our intention as a board to add our collective voice in support of the condemnation of racism, bigotry, and hate, and affirm our commitment to equity and inclusion. I would like to present a resolution, or we would like to present a resolution that affects to that effect for the board to review and consideration at a future board meeting. So basically just so we can talk about it and at a future board meeting and get a resolution for us to support.
Excellent. Okay, so yeah, we had a brief conversation back at the beginning of July, and our legal counsel was present at the time. So will you then connect with her, Julian, to get a draft resolution together and then out to the board so they can read it? And if everyone is in agreement with the content, we'll go ahead and get it on the agenda for the next meeting for a vote.
Sounds good.
Is that
Yes,
okay?
ma'am.
All right, well, thank you for bringing that to us. All right, do we have anything under new business? Okay, so let's move on to the actual items. Under treasurer's recommendations on page 3, item 1, Mr. Faulkner, please.
Treasurer's recommendations is recommended a resolution listed below regarding the July 20 board meeting be approved as submitted.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 4, item 2, Mr. Fowley, please.
The monthly financial statement. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the July 2020 financial statement and short-term investments made by the treasurer during July 2020, Exhibit A, pages 33 through 34, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 6, item 3, Mr. Walker, please.
2019-20 co-curricular budget and purpose statements. It is recommended the resolution listed below establishing the 2019-20 co-curricular budget and purpose statements be approved as submitted.
I'd second.
Okay, any questions about this? Go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, on page 7, item 4, Mrs. Patterson, please.
The appropriation budget is recommended, the resolution listed below, to approve appropriation budgets A through I be approved as submitted.
Okay, that'll take you,
Second.
and that takes you to page 12. And does anyone have any questions about this? Okay,
No.
all right, go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, on page 13, item 5, Mr. Faulkner, please.
Approve the application, accept the grant, and approve the grant appropriations. Is recommended the resolution listed below to approve the application, accept the grant, and approve the grant appropriation A be approved as submitted.
Second.
Okay, any questions on this? Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, on page 14, item 1, Mr. Fowley, please.
Agreements, contracts, and releases. It is recommended the resolution listed below, entering into agreements, contracts, and releases A through H, be approved as submitted.
Should it be A through L? Huh? I? It's L, right?
Yes, it should be changed.
Oh, L,
A,
sorry.
yeah. All right, do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. And does anyone have any questions about any of this?
No.
Okay, go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
If the board would like, we have the representatives from Gardner here.
Sure.
For a brief discussion on the contract that was just approved on the last agenda item.
Okay.
Mr. Lacy, if you'd like to have some conversation.
And they do have handouts, so we'll make sure that all of you, we can probably scan them.
In their email tomorrow,
Yeah, in your
tomorrow,
email tomorrow.
late morning, early afternoon.
Okay?
Yeah, we'll have,
You have copies there today?
Yeah, so we'll scan
okay.
them, we'll scan them and email them to you.
yeah, we'll have, this is David Smith from Gardner. What we found basically pretty early on when I started, and as Steve was kind of managing some of the utilities within the district, that things just were kind of out of whack. We weren't comfortable with how the utility bills were coming in, and it just, I guess more than anything, it just didn't feel right. So we contacted Gardner. Gardner has since done a utility assessment for our district, where they have found some potential for us. If we get our buildings to the minimum Energy Star level, Dave has promised that we should be saving $300,000 a year. The thing that I wanted to kind of emphasize with everybody is what we're looking to do is basically take our existing system of control that is a proprietary system. It can only be fixed by one company. And we're going to go to an open system that will allow us to be fixed by any company we choose in the future. So I think that's very important, number one. And number two, the next step, once these controls will be in place, is we'll be able to have a 24/7 remote monitoring system of our operations, so that as they look and see remotely what's going on, if things are not working properly, we can then correct these things in a much more timely manner. So I introduce Dave here, and he can go through some of the detail of what we're talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. I believe that everybody has received a copy of the contract agreement that was inside of your board packages tonight. What I was hoping to do was maybe give you a little bit of background on the scope of work that you see within that contract in the 10 minutes that I have this evening, and maybe hit on some of the highlights to really kind of open up some discussion. I also have Kevin Pugley from Gardner. He is our senior controls engineer. So if there's some technical questions, we can invite him into this as well. There's really two components, and Mr. Lacy did a great job explaining this, but I'll hit on those very quickly. The two components of what we're proposing to you tonight is migrating away from a proprietary system into a non-proprietary system. And then the second component is being able to use data analytics to develop a platform that moves you into predictive maintenance as opposed to preventative maintenance. When you look at your HVAC system, the most important component to that HVAC system is your building automation system. It's really the backbone. It's what communicates to your boilers, your chillers, your air handling units. And you can have, and I'll give this as a great example, you can have the newest, most efficient mechanical equipment out there, but if you cannot control that equipment, if you cannot program that equipment, your buildings will be less efficient than buildings that have 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old mechanicals out there. So the question really becomes then is, what capabilities do you as the owner have in managing your buildings? And this is where we get into the proprietary and the non-proprietary systems. With a proprietary system, it is the vendor that holds the key to programming your control systems. Now, of course, you as facility folks can get in and do things like schedule changes and set points, but you can't get in and adjust the algorithms within that control system to maximize your efficiency and really optimize the system overall. With a non-proprietary system, which is what we're talking to you tonight about, is that we are handing you as the owner the key. You are the ones that then can make the decision on who you want to hire as a vendor to come in and adjust those programs. Matter of fact, I would tell you that the Ohio Schools Council's Business Advisory selected Gardner as their vendor of choice. And one of the primary reasons for that is because we are offering their customers, which are over 200 school districts, a non-proprietary system. Obviously, we would want to continue a partnership with the district, but if God forbid there was the relationship soured, you would not be tied into Gardner. You would have the keys to that control system. You could take that control system out there and or those keys and hire a different vendor, okay? The approach that we took was we looked at doing a slow migrating of your control system into a Tritium system, which we have a flyer that you guys can pick up tomorrow or the next day, as opposed to what's called a full integration, or what's known in our industry as a rip and replace. And the reason why we chose that approach is for a couple reasons. One, and I think really the most important, is the upfront cost of doing a full rip and replace. But two, through a data analytics program, it's not necessary. What we can do, and I can give you a couple of examples of what data analytics does. So we will have back-end connection to your control system, and we will be doing a data dump of what is taking place in your buildings every 15 minutes, 24/7, 365. And what this allows us to do is catch small problems before they become big problems. If we are seeing that a chiller is short cycling, we can alert the school district to go look at that chiller, find out what that particular issue is, and fix it on your own. Another example is we will create over time a living HVAC asset inventory for you. And we can customize that for you, and we can get as detailed as you'd like. But for an example, you could look at the high school and you'll have boiler 1. All right, well, what do we include in boiler 1? Well, we include the make, the model, the sizing. We can include the age. We can include the latest or the expected life expectancy of that boiler. From a service perspective, as you, as a district, do service on that boiler, or you have a vendor do service on that boiler, you can write notes. So for an example, we were in that boiler and we changed out 3 valves on June 6, 2019. And you will build those notes over time. But who really benefits is typically the CFO and the facility managers, because it allows you to then budget future HVAC replacements in the future. If you know you have a 20-year-old rooftop unit that has a normal lifespan of 20 years and you're beginning to see it causing problems, it might be a situation where now you should start budgeting that, because you know in the next 2 or 3 years you're going to need to replace it. One last example is trending. As we're getting snapshots of your facilities and we're trending how your buildings are operating, we can improve the comfort within your buildings. We can improve the energy efficiencies within your building. And lastly, on that side of it, I would add that you are now receiving real-time training. Typically, the way control projects work is you get a new control system in, that controls company schedules 6 hours of training for you, and it's difficult to do that. 6 hours is really not a lot of time. It's typically in 2-hour increments, and it gets pretty detailed. So a lot of the information that you're learning in those 2-hour increments aren't retained. You're still going to have that training available with Gardner, but what you're also going to have is a help desk, and your facility folks are going to be able to see how we are monitoring your system and making recommended adjustments within your systems over a period of time. So with that, I guess I'll open it up to any questions anybody might have.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
I hadn't been that long ago. I thought that we had decided that we hired a couple of people, at least 1 or 2 people. Can you hear?
Yes, yes.
Okay, we had a couple of people that was going to handle all of this, and what happened to them, or what are they doing something different, or what? Because what you just pointed out here was sort of the same thing that was supposed to happen. And my question is that you said that we could save roughly $300,000. Is that what you're saying?
Well, there is another flyer that I have here, and I don't know if there's, I doubt there's any way that you can really see it.
This was in our packet, in our
Was it in
board,
the
in our board
packet?
agenda, yeah.
That's
Okay.
all I didn't-
Yeah.
So have you seen, this is your
The
Energy
bar.
Star score. Okay, these are your Energy Star rankings.
Yeah.
So let me run through this very quickly. Energy Star, for folks that, and I won't get, this is a high level overview. Energy Star scores are ranked from 0 to 100. To be Energy Star certified, you have to have a ranking of 75, okay? And so down here at the bottom of these, for an example, at the high school, you can see that your Energy Star score is 20. The blue line represents what you're currently spending at the high school. That's that's $307,000. If your score was 75, you would be spending $169,000, meaning that there is a potential for $137,000 in savings at the high school. And then at the end of this, we've added them all up. And what that would tell you is that currently the district's spending $778. If your buildings were Energy Star rated, you'd be spending $437,000, which means that there's a potential to save $310,000.
Okay.
Okay? Now, go ahead, sir.
No, I thought that's what that meant, and I guess my question is, what is, and maybe I missed that, what is the investment that it's going to take from us to get that to happen from you?
Right. So the plan is twofold. First, what we want to do is we want to install those back-end controls, and that is in the agreement that you see today, and I believe that number is like $220,000. Once those back-end controls are in, what we're going to do is we're going to do data dumps for the next 2 weeks to 4 weeks. Those data dumps are going to tell us specifically where potential energy savings can be verified. Once we have an understanding of what that number is, then we can get creative on what a applied intelligence contract is going to look like. We think we can be creative in your case because there is so much savings within this applied intelligence program that we can do a shared savings program if you'd like, which means that there would be no cost out of your pocket up front to do this. For an example, if we feel that we can save the district $100,000 annually simply from a controls upgrade, we can do a 60-40 split where you guys will receive 60% of the savings, we would receive 40% of the savings. So we have some skin in the game. The more savings we can generate, the more savings that you guys can realize, as well as more money that we would wind up making. In some cases, the district may say, well, we don't want to do a shared savings. We would just rather do a simple agreement. And in that case, I believe, Kevin, that contract, we priced that out, I think it was $40,000 a year. So we would look at $40,000 a year where we would just collect that, and then whatever the savings were, if it was $120,000, you would get the, what is that, $80,000 in savings. So until we connect those back-end devices and run and trend your buildings over a period of time and have that final number, once we have it, we'll present it to the administration, and then it's up to you guys on the way you would like to draw up an agreement.
I'm fine with that thing. I didn't understand at the beginning what, how the whole plan was gonna work, but there's some information you're asking permission to do now, so we can make an intelligent decision on what plan we want to use. Is that correct?
That's yes, sir. That is correct.
Oh,
I think Mr. Shiro has something to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, about a year ago, I started digging into utility bills. At this time of the year, in the summer, because you know how fiscally conscious I am when it comes to the district. I think everyone understands that. And so I started digging through utility bills, and I started spreadsheets. I started comparing them, and I believed that we were spending more money in utilities year-round than we needed to. And so we started peeling back the onion, and that's kind of what has got us to this day. I started the conversations with Mr. Wasser. When Mr. Wasser left and I was in the business office, I continued to monitor. Mr. Lacey came on board, brought him up to speed. In the fall, had an introduction to Gardner, who is here with us this evening. I think that was in October. So this has been something that we've been looking at, our efficiencies and inefficiencies as a district. And so that is what has brought us here today. Simply looking and believing we could do better, believing we could do significantly better, and to do nothing would be, I think it would be a problem. And I think that we need to explore this as an option. We explored, with other school districts. We relied on Ohio Schools Council for some guidance and information in this, and that's what's brought us here today. We feel the timing is right to do that. Again, when we had the school closure, we were able to reduce utility costs along the way, and so that's given us a chance to dig into this at this point and hopefully get the ball rolling prior to the winter heating season and then beyond. So that's kind of a little more history of how this came to light, and it's been a year in dialogue through the business office.
okay.
Okay, is everybody else good?
Is there a reason why the High Street building isn't part of this?
I don't have that as a direct answer. I would have to say that our focus was on the schools, given their size and square footage and the expenditures tied to those buildings. But I would have to get back with you as why that's not in there, and I don't have that information before me this evening.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you coming in this evening.
Thank you.
Did we already call the roll? We're
it
good.
on.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, so on page 19 then, let's move on to item number 2. And I'm going to have Mr. Walker, please.
Okay, and I'll be reading all 3 policies in the entirety, I'm asking?
No.
No.
Okay. Board policies, first reading. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the adoption of the board policies, first reading, A through C, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. And any questions on this? Okay, go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. And then on to page 20, item 3, Mrs. Patterson, please.
Board policies waive second reading. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the adoption of board policies A through C, second reading be waived and approved as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, any questions? Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. And on page 21, item 4, Mr. Faulkner, please.
The Ohio Department of Education certification for Ohio Teachers Evaluation Systems and the Ohio Principal Evaluation System. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the Ohio Department of Education certification for credential Ohio Teachers Evaluation System and Ohio Principals evaluators be approved as submitted. You have the names listed under the OTAS and OPAS. Our Associate Superintendent, congratulations to Wendy, and then we have OTAS, Jennifer, and Danielle.
Do you have a second? Thank you. Okay, I don't think anyone has any questions about this, our favorite one.
Congratulations.
So go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, on page 22, item 5, Mr. Fowley, please.
Recognition to furnish insurance for property, vehicle fleet, general liability, school leaders' professional liability, boiler, crime, flood, earthquake, and excess liability for school year 2020 and 2021. It is recommended the resolution listed below to recognize the quote received to furnish insurance for property, vehicle fleet, general liability, school leaders' professional liability, boiler, crime, flood, and earthquake, and excess liability for school year 2020 through 2021 be approved as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, any questions about this? Go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Moving on to page 23, item 6, Mr. Walker, please.
Awarding the contract for furnishing insurance for property, vehicle, fleet, general liability, school leaders, professional liability, boiler, crime, flood, and earthquake, and excessive liability for school year 2020-2021. It is recommended the resolution listed below to award the contract for furnishing insurance for property, vehicle, fleet, general liability, school leaders, professional liability, boiler, crime, flood, and earthquake, and excessive liability for school year 2020-2021 be approved as submitted.
I second.
Thank you. Okay, any questions? Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, on page 24, item 7, Mrs. Patterson, please.
Acceptance of gifts. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the acceptance of gifts be approved as submitted. Our benefactor is the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Comp, Christine Williams. And the description is for the District 5 face mask for employee with an estimated value of $2,451 to be used to support the staff of the Warren City School District.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, very nice.
Second.
Thank you. And as always, thank you to our benefactors for supporting our district. Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, so on page 25, item 8, Mr. Faulkner, please.
Okay.
Tuition.
Reimbursement.
Yep.
Is recommended the resolution listed below for tuition reimbursement be approved as submitted, and you have the names listed there for the reimbursement. Congratulations to all of those persons who continue to improve their education to support our children.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. And on to page 26, item 9, Mr. Fowley, please.
Personnel recommendations. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding personnel items A through F be approved as submitted.
And that takes you through page 30. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, any questions? We don't have any retirements or anything of that nature on here. Just a military leave. Thank you for your service to our nation.
Yes, thank you.
No one else has anything. Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, and now we don't have anything under associate recommendation. Now we're under board recommendations. On page 31, item 1, Mr. Walker, please.
Board's recommendations, resolution to specify the Warren City School District's intent not to provide career technical education to students enrolled in grades 7 and 8 for the 2020-21 school year. It is recommended the resolution listed below for the district's intent not to provide career technical education to students enrolled in grades 7 and 8 for the year 2020-2021 school year be approved as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? This is something we do yearly. It's a formality.
Okay. I was gonna say, is this like what,
Is
what
so,
does this look like different from last school year? So nothing really?
no, this is just a resolution that we have to pass every year.
Okay.
Okay. All right, call the roll, please.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, on page 32, item 11, we did not receive any public participation via email this week. So at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to move into executive session under the provisions of Ohio Revised Code 121.22. The Warren City Board of Education recessed to executive session at 7:20 p.m. to discuss E, preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations with public employees, G, district security arrangements and emergency response protocols, and F, matters required to be kept confidential by state or federal law.
I second.
Oh, we need someone to say I so moved.
Also move.
Thank you. And then
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead and call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yeah.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
and Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes. Okay, so we'll be moving into executive session. There will be no action following the executive session, so the meeting will adjourn after that. So thank you for Zooming in with us. And board members, we will call you on your cell phones.
So
Okay,
we're going to leave the Zoom meeting at this
Yes,
time.
yes, you're leaving the
Are we going to
Zoom.
re-enter to adjourn?
I think we can just adjourn.
Well, I think we can adjourn as we normally do, just with this, the treasurer noting the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you announced that no
Yeah.
action, but we kind of.
Yeah,
adjourned from the
Okay.
meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Everyone, stay healthy. Back up, mask up, wash up. From the governor,
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.